Nothing in British public life ever collapses in a single moment. Not governments, not careers, and certainly not the monarchy. Everything here falls slowly, plaster from a centuries-old ceiling, cracking bit by bit until one morning it finally drops. And then, of course, everyone pretends to be shocked. The House of Windsor's latest implosion followed that same slow, familiar rhythm. The public saw only the headline, a dramatic royal decree stripping two high-profile figures of titles and duties, and imagined the king waking up one morning, sipping Earl Grey, abruptly deciding he would tolerate scandal no longer. But anyone who has wandered the late-night corridors of Westminster knows better. Royal decisions are never spontaneous. They're sedimentary, layers of pressure, frustration, and political necessity building over years. And so here we are. Prince Andrew, his past controversies roaring back to life through newly circulated documents and renewed scrutiny. And Meghan Markle, whose relationship with the institution has long been stormy, suddenly pulled into the conversation through what insiders described only as uncomfortable overlaps, the sort of social proximities that fuel palace anxiety even when they imply nothing criminal. The palace, already stretched thin by a decade of fractures, family disputes, media storms, staff complaints, and endless public relations battles, finally reached its breaking point. And when the breaking point arrives for the monarchy, it does not whisper. It pronounces. On the fog-soaked morning of November 10th, King Charles stepped before the cameras. No coded palace language. No gentle references to ongoing processes. Just the bluntest royal statement in decades. Andrew stripped. Meghan removed. William and Catherine elevated. The future decided. The crowd gasped. Newsrooms scrambled. Social media detonated. But the real story isn't the purge itself, it's why it happened now. Public trust had been eroding. Younger generations questioned the monarchy's relevance. Commonwealth nations flirted openly with republicanism. Scandals, whispers, and endless family drama had dragged the institution into turbulence again and again. Something had to give. And so the king acted decisively, positioning William and Catherine, the calm, steady, meticulously crafted faces of the next generation, at the center of the monarchy's future. Their public warmth, reliability, and sense of duty became the institution's final line of defense against irrelevance. The shift worked. Polls ticked upward. Commentators spoke of renewal. Even hardened MPs begrudgingly admitted the drama had finally stopped, at least for now. But beneath the polished palace facade, the real question remains. Was this a true cleansing of the institution? Or simply a strategic pause? A brief clearing of the stage before the next storm? No one inside the palace will say it aloud, but many believe history will remember this not as the fall of Andrew and Meghan, but as the quiet beginning of the William era, a transition disguised as a disciplinary moment. For now, the monarchy stands between tradition and transformation, fragile yet determined to survive. Whether this marks rebirth or merely an interlude, only time will decide. And history does not whisper. It rings. In the hours after King Charles's unprecedented announcement, London felt strangely suspended, caught between disbelief and inevitability. Outside Buckingham Palace, the crowd swelled, murmuring in low, stunned tones, as though they had witnessed a ghost step out from behind the royal gates. Inside the palace, however, the atmosphere was electric. Corridors normally hushed by protocol buzzed like power lines after a storm. Advisors hurried past one another with clipped whispers. You could tell who supported the decision and who feared what it might unleash simply by the tension in their shoulders. And in the middle of it all lay the one truth nobody dared voice. What happens next could redefine the monarchy forever. The Andrew aftermath. His removal, while shocking, had long felt like a boulder waiting to fall. Insiders noted that within minutes of the king's speech, aides were already boxing up plaques, uniforms, and ceremonial regalia from rooms he hadn't used in years. A quiet end to a very loud shadow. One palace staffer reportedly sighed. It was overdue. Everyone knew it. The Meghan shockwave. But Meghan's removal? That was the lightning strike. Phones across the Atlantic began ringing within seconds. PR teams, lawyers, publicists, everyone pulled into motion at once. California doesn't wake slowly, especially not when the monarchy is involved. Within an hour, Journalists in LA claimed sources close to Meghan were preparing statements. UK newsrooms braced for impact. It wasn't a question of if she would respond, only how. Meanwhile, inside Westminster, MPs buzzed with a different kind of energy. Some felt vindicated. Some were horrified. Others simply watched the unfolding drama with the weary amusement of people who have seen too many scandals to pick a side. One Labour MP was overheard muttering, "God help the monarchy if she decides to go nuclear." William and Catherine, the unspoken shift. At Kensington Palace, the mood was calmer but no less intense. William had spent the past decade waiting, reluctantly, carefully, cautiously. Not pushing, not demanding, but ready. And now the spotlight had been forced onto him, not by coronation or crown, but by crisis. Catherine, still recovering from her own health battles, stepped into the moment with a quiet steel the public rarely sees. Behind closed doors, those who know her best say she understood immediately. This wasn't just a clean-out. It was the opening act of a new era. Charles, the weight of a king. As the public parsed every syllable of the king's address, Charles retreated to a private room. Those close to him say he looked both relieved and exhausted, a man who had finally done what he believed necessary, even if it fractured the family further. He had modernized the monarchy in the only way monarchs ever truly do. By drawing a line. Whether it was the right line remained to be seen. The world reacts. Across the Commonwealth, leaders scrambled to adjust their statements. Some praised the king's decisiveness. Others expressed concern about instability at the heart of the British crown. Social media, predictably, became a battleground. The hashtags collided like political shrapnel. In Toronto, a news anchor put it bluntly, "This is the monarchy's most controversial moment since Diana." And then, the leak. Just when the palace believed it had steadied the ship, a new problem erupted. A confidential briefing memo, circulated among senior advisors only hours after the king's speech, suddenly appeared online. No one knew who leaked it. No one admitted to sending it. But the memo contained one explosive line: "Prepare for sustained media retaliation from the Duchess." The palace, barely recovered from the morning storm, braced for another. Buckingham Palace slept uneasily after the king's thunderous announcement, but California did not sleep at all. Because while the palace prepared for a quiet rebuilding, across the Atlantic a different kind of machinery had awakened. A machinery polished by Hollywood, sharpened by American media culture, and powered by the one currency the monarchy cannot control: narrative. And Meghan Markle understood narrative better than anyone. The California War Room. In a glass-walled mansion perched over Montecito, lights burned through the night. A dozen advisors gathered around a long table: PR consultants, attorneys, media strategists, and two former political operatives who knew how to weaponize public sentiment better than most governments. No one raised their voice, but the tension was thick. On the table were printouts of the King's statement, early British headlines, and, most importantly, the leaked palace memo predicting sustained retaliation from the Duchess. A memo that had insulted Meghan more deeply than the title removal itself. Her chief advisor leaned forward, tapping the document. "They expect a fight. They're preparing for a war." Meghan, calm but visibly wounded, replied, "Then they should understand something. I don't respond because they expect me to. I respond because silence hasn't protected me once." Her team exchanged glances. A decision had been made. 2. Westminster, the panic begins. Back in London, the mood in Westminster flipped from triumph to trepidation. At 9:43 a.m., The Guardian published a line that jolted the political class awake. Sources in California say the Duchess is preparing a televised statement. That single sentence ricocheted across WhatsApp groups used by MPs, journalists, and senior aides. By noon, ministers were demanding briefings. By 1 p.m., the Prime Minister requested an urgent call with Buckingham Palace. By 1:07 p.m., that call was leaked. A senior Tory MP muttered to a colleague in the Commons tea room, "If Meghan speaks, the government will inevitably be dragged into it. That's the last thing we need during a cost-of-living crisis." The response from the colleague? The monarchy might not survive another media war. 3. The Palace Crisis Room. Inside Buckingham Palace, an emergency meeting convened in the yellow drawing room. It hadn't been used since the Queen's final years, and only for moments of real constitutional vulnerability. Present were the King, the Queen Consort, the Lord Chamberlain, senior private secretaries, William, via video link from Sandringham, Catherine, listening quietly beside him. The meeting began stiffly, but it did not stay that way. King Charles, weary but still composed. We expected backlash, but we did not expect this level of escalation. William, sharper than usual. We should have. Meghan doesn't go quietly, and you all know it. A heavy silence settled over the room. Then Catherine spoke, softly, but with the clarity of someone who understood public mood better than the advisors paid to track it. If she speaks first, she controls the tone. If we speak first, it looks defensive. Either way, we must stay dignified. The public is exhausted. She was right. Everyone in the room knew she was right. But that didn't solve the immediate problem. The King exhaled slowly. We must hold our ground. No counter-statement. No rebuttal. The Lord Chamberlain shifted uneasily. Your Majesty, what if her statement contradicts us? Charles closed his eyes. Then the country will decide who it believes. 4. The leak that changed everything. At 3:16 p.m., another storm hit. Someone, no one knew who, leaked an internal palace email discussing Meghan's reputational risks. The phrasing was clinical, cold, reductionist. It made her sound like a hazard to be managed rather than a person. It was the worst possible leak at the worst possible moment. American media exploded. British tabloids doubled down. Twitter became an inferno. A trending hashtag emerged within minutes. #let Meghan speak. And the palace realized, with a dread that seeped into their bones. This wasn't just a clash of statements. It was a global battle of loyalty. V. William's private breaking point. That evening, William walked alone through the gardens of Kensington Palace. The crisp air stung his eyes, but it wasn't the cold that unsettled him. For years he had carried the weight of monarchy like an inherited stone, heavy but familiar. Now it felt alive, volatile, and ready to explode. His phone vibrated. A message from a senior aide. American networks circling. Meghan's statement expected in 48 hours. William stared at the screen long enough for it to dim. Then he whispered to himself. We cannot live our entire lives in crisis management. But that was the tragedy of monarchy. You didn't get to choose the battles. The battles chose you. 6. California prepares the strike. In Montecito, Meghan stepped into a softly lit studio built inside her home. A single camera. A single chair. A single microphone. Her team watched from behind the lights. She took a breath, not the breath of someone preparing for war, but the breath of someone tired of being misrepresented. I'm not doing this for revenge, she said quietly. I'm doing this because I don't deserve to be erased. The director nodded. Whenever you're ready. Meghan looked straight into the lens. And for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. 7. The countdown begins. In London, a royal aide burst into the corridor outside the King's study. Your Majesty, American networks have just confirmed. The Duchess will speak on Friday evening. Charles lowered the document in his hand. He knew history well enough to recognize defining moments when they approached. This was one of them. A royal clean-out had become a royal confrontation. A family rift had become a global spectacle. And the monarchy's future hung in the balance. The storm that Charles hoped he had ended was only just beginning. My silence has never protected me. Friday evening. Millions watched. The screen faded into Meghan sitting alone in a calm, softly lit room. No glamour, no entourage, just a steady gaze that said she already knew the world was waiting. She took one breath, then spoke. I want to be clear. I have not committed any wrongdoing, and I reject the insinuations being used to justify this decision. Her voice didn't tremble. If anything, it sharpened. I loved my role. I served with sincerity. But over time, I became an easy target, someone who could carry blame for problems I did not create. A pause. The kind that lands heavier than words. This is not about titles. This is about dignity. She didn't attack the king. She didn't accuse the palace. But she said enough to send shockwaves through both. I will not wage a war against my husband's family. But I won't disappear, either. My voice is mine. She ended with a final, measured line. The truth has weight. And one day, it will stand on its own. The feed cut to black. In London, Palisades froze. In California, phones erupted. Around the world, headlines flashed. And just like that, the next chapter of the royal storm began.